Good morning. The much promised 5-year parent visa, the Parent Boost visa, has just been announced. Now, it's pretty close to what the Minister spoke with me about prior to the election, but we now have more details as to how it's going to work. We're going to go through that now, along with answering all the questions that you have been sending through, so thank you for those questions. As with all these announcements, we do not have the final instructions, and we don't expect to have these until pretty close to the actual visa coming in, probably some point early in September. I'll put out a new video and article when we have those. Now, to the basics. It's referred to as a parent visa, but in the presentation with Mark Mitchell, there is a mention that it also applies to grandparents, much like the parent-grandparent visitor visa. So this should be open to both parents and grandparents. So this is a Parent Boost visitor visa. This was created based on the ridiculous situation where people wanted their family in New Zealand with them, but instead could only have them here for half the time. Now, the biggest concern for the government has been, of course, the cost of having the parents here, including the health costs. That's always going to be the big consideration. This visa solves that. So from 29 September 2025, parents will be able to apply for a 5-year visitor visa. The most important requirement is down to the person who is sponsoring them. Now, the sponsoring child must be a citizen or resident visa holder. They also need to be a biological or adopted child of the person that is being sponsored, or grandchild, so someone cannot sponsor their parent-in-law, except if you're doing it as a couple, which we'll cover shortly. They must be in New Zealand for the entire time the parent is here. The sponsor must be here. They are agreeing to be responsible for all costs for the parent while in New Zealand. And finally, there are some financial requirements. Now, there's been a lot of misrepresentation about this online. From one political party. So we're going to go through them with care. Now, to be clear, you only need to meet one of these requirements, not all three, just one. Okay, so the first one is the sponsor needs to earn at least the median wage, which is currently $31.61 per hour. It doesn't say whether it needs to be full-time or not, but we'd expect this to have to be at least 30 hours a week, which Immigration New Zealand sees as being full-time. And to show this, you're looking to be providing things like pay slips, employment agreement, IRD records, bank statement, or some sort of mixture of those. That's what we're expecting will be required. Now, if you don't earn that much, then as a couple, you can sponsor together if the combined hourly income is $47.41 per hour if you add the incomes together, which I believe that should be possible for almost all couples in New Zealand where both couples are working. Now, that's the first way to provide an ability to sponsor. Again, you need to find one way, not all three. Another option is that the parent can have a personal income equivalent to the New Zealand superannuation, possibly through superannuation in their own country or investments, things like that. This is currently $32,611 per year for a single person, or $49,552 for a couple. Now, remember that your pension may be impacted if you leave your home country. So you should look at the laws of your home country as to how that's going to be impacted. The final option, again, you only need one of the three, is the parent has sufficient personal funds, being $160,000 New Zealand for a solo parent, or $250,000 for a couple. This is the one that the political party has been pushing as unaffordable, but I don't believe that many people will actually want to look at that as an option. They'll be looking at probably the sponsor having that median wage requirement. So complaints about this are really kind of disingenuous, as it is not a requirement to have all three, just one of the three requirements is being met. So that's the sponsorship requirements, and again, it is one of those three things, not all three. One thing to mention is that to apply for this visa, you must be offshore. So for those of you who are already in New Zealand on a visa or a parent-grandparent visa, you can apply for this visa from offshore. You must leave the country to apply. Now, looking at the health requirements, parents must have an acceptable standard of health, as is required currently for all visas for New Zealand. However, for this visa, you're also required to show at least 1 year of health insurance. So the health insurance must cover emergency medical care with a minimum of $250,000 per year, a repatriation back to their home country. So if you need to go back home, the insurance will cover your flights back, as well as return of remains. If you sadly pass away, the insurance will cover the cost of taking your remains back to your home country. Now, this health insurance must be in place for the entire duration of the in New Zealand. Sorry, also I did miss one there. Cancer treatment of up to $100,000 per year is required in that medical insurance. So yeah, health insurance must be in place for the entirety of the duration in New Zealand, but you have to show 1 year when you first apply for it, and then you must need to keep extending that if you're going to be in the country. You need to retain that for that time. If INZ was to find out that you weren't maintaining it while in New Zealand, then you risk of losing your visa, being deported, or at the very least, it will make future visas more difficult to get. Now, the second medical will be required in the third year of the visa. This must be done outside New Zealand, so you're going to leave the country to get this medical done offshore. And we expect that it will take some time for them to process the medical being done and effectively asking for the rest of that visa. It could take weeks, possibly months, if there are any health issues found. We believe that this reason is to ensure that people who still meet health standards, and if they no longer meet those health standards, then Immigration New Zealand can end the visa while they are offshore, reducing the hassle of having to the costs or findings in deporting someone from the country. You also need to show evidence, of course, that your health insurance still continues. Now, for the cost, it will be $3,000 for most applicants, but for those of you from Pacific Fee Band, it's $2,450. On top of this is $100 the tourism levy payable as well, so it's $3,100 effectively and $2,550 for our Pacifica friends. Finally, it is a 5-year visa that we've already seen the need to be offshore at least once in the visa. Well, before you apply as well. A second 5-year visa is possible, but it needs to be at least a 3-month period between the two visas. You have to leave the country and apply from offshore, as you do for this visa, and have that 3-month break between the visas. Of course, you're also going to need that the third year medical outside the country, so effectively you're going to have 4 times offshore before the first visa, for the first medical, a 3-year medical, when you renew the visa, and for the second 3-year medical. So that's 4 times offshore. Over 10 years, that's not too bad. So that is the basics. I think we've covered some of the questions that were sent in, quite a few questions that came through this morning, but let's answer a few more directly. At least one of these was based on the Minister's comments in her announcement with the Prime Minister, which I have listened to. One question was as to sponsorship and the wage requirements. For those of you who are self-employed, you'll have no hourly rate because you're self-employed. So it isn't really clear at the moment from what has been released as to how that's going to be handled. We do expect that this will be clarified in the final instructions. That's our belief on that. As we know how Immigration New Zealand typically handles this sorts of things, and of course we know that the Minister is keen to have more business owners here in the country and isn't going to create some rules that are going to discourage you from being here. We'll know more about that closer to the date when it comes out, as to how that's going to work. Another related to the fact that INZ insurers generally have age limits. Now with the insurers, I did mention before, it can be insurers both who are in New Zealand based or offshore. They haven't made a requirement. You can find insurers from around the world to insure you, and that is completely fine. The Minister actually did this deliberately to provide this, just because it just provides more options to migrants as to who they want to insure them and what's available out there. We also expect to see that with this visa coming through, we're going to see more New Zealand companies providing longer insurance levels, and for those who are older being covered, because there's some people who are saying, well, you can't get insurance over a certain age with some insurers. This will expand that, because there'll be a market there for people to make money from the insurers. What that costs will, of course, we have to wait and see, and hopefully some competition between the local and the offshore insurers. But we'll see where that goes to. Now, some questions that we had, some that were sent through, and also some of our own. Now, in a video with Mark Mitchell, Minister of Police, Mr. Mitchell mentioned that people won't have to rely on draws from September. We just want to clarify that comment based on our knowledge of how these visas work and what we hear from within Immigration New Zealand and the government. We believe there is no intention. So that's no intention to remove the ballot system or to increase the numbers for the parent resident visa. That comment was not made in relation to parent resident visa. I think it was just made in relation to making it easier for parents to come here for a longer period than was currently available. We currently have the parent-grandparent, which allows for 18 months over 3 years. This is way to be here for 5 years, over 5 years. So I think that was just a comment made in that general situation. It does not announce, it's not an announcement of any change at all to the parent resident visa. Another question we had was that if, like the parent resident visa, the amount needed to be earned will differ depending on how many parents are being sponsored. So can a couple earning 1.5 times the median sponsor, which is the median wage, which is required under this, can they sponsor all 4 of their parents on that, or there needs to be some sort of multiplier in place? Because right now, parent resident, the more parents you want to bring in, the higher the income has to be. Will we see something similar with this, or is it basically just going to be you're earning 1.5 times the median, you can bring in all 4 parents? We'll wait and see about that. Of course, the cost of insurance, and that will add to it, but we'll wait and see what happens with that. Nothing clear yet. Finally, will there be a check to ensure that insurance covers all preconditions? So if someone has a precondition that isn't enough to block them from coming to New Zealand on a visa, will that precondition, if it's not covered by the insurance, will Immigration New Zealand be aware of that, need to be aware of that? What do they need to know from the insurance? We know that they have to be the $250,000 cover, the ability to return, the remains being returned, 100,000 cancer cover. Will also need to be providing that insurance to shift preconditions. That's when we want to wait and see what's going on there. We're assuming that health issues which that are deemed high cost New Zealand will still block the visa, even if covered by insurance as well. So if you have insurance that covers one of those health conditions which typically would say you're not acceptable standard of health, this won't change it, insurance won't change it. Immigration will probably still say, no, we cannot cover you for that condition, even with the insurance. That's the current status quo. I think that's going to keep going forward as well. That is it for now. I think we're going to get more questions coming in the next few days as people think about visa some more, and more information is released as to how this visa is going to work. For now, it provides what the government promised, a way for parents and grandparents to come to New Zealand for 5 years and then another 5 years. It will provide, at a cost, a great solution for so many Kiwis wanting to have their parents with them for all of those special events. Kia kaha. See you next time.